die afgelope 2 weke berig ons oor 'n peiling wat steun vir politieke partye meet en vanaand maak ons vir oulaas weer so. Ons het al gekyk na die ANC en die DA en die keer fokus ons op wat die peiling oor die EFF sê. Kom ons kyk. Die marknavorsingsagentskap Victory Research het verlede week die laaste van 3 stelle data bekend gemaak wat die steun vir politieke partye in Suid-Afrika in die aanloop tot die nasionale verkiesing in 2024 meet. 3204 geregistreerde kiesers het deelgeneem aan die peiling wat in Julie vanjaar gedoen is. Die EFF kan volgens die opname op 12,8% van die stemme staatmaak mits alle geregistreerde kiesers hul kruisies gaan trek. In dieselfde scenario lyk die steun vir die EFF in 3 groot provinsies soos volg: Gauteng 16%, KwaZulu-Natal 11% en die Wes-Kaap 15%. 64% van die EFF se kiesers woon in stede en 36% woon in Suid-Afrika se landelike gebiede. 93% van die EFF se kiesers is swart en sy sowat 7% bruin kiesers is hoofsaaklik in die Wes-Kaap woonagtig. 62% van die EFF se kiesers is werkloos, 32% is tussen die ouderdom van 18 en 29 jaar, 52% is tussen 30 en 59 en 14% is 60 of ouer. 75% van die EFF se kiesers verdien 'n maandelikse huishoudelike inkomste van R4.999 of minder. 99% het 'n matriekkwalifikasie of laer, 39% is vroulik en 61% is manlik. Die partyleier Julius Malema het onder alle deelnemers aan die opname 'n gunstigheidsgradering van 24%, terwyl 59% van hulle hom nie gunstig beheer nie. 35% van diegene wat vir die opname gepols is van mening dat die EFF rassisties is en 69,2% sê die party is gewelddadig. Om verder te gesels oor die EFF en die steun wat hulle onder kiesers blyk te hê, sluit 2 politieke kenners nou by my aan. Ebrahim Fakir is steeds met ons en ons verwelkom ook graag weer vir Gareth van Onselen. Gareth, so when we spoke the past 2 weeks, you mentioned that there's really nothing that surprised you in the data regarding the ANC and the DA. Was there anything in this set of data regarding the EFF that surprised you?
Well, not as far as party support goes. I think it was interesting that the leader's favourability had dropped somewhat. The most interesting stuff had to do with the EFF's brand. We tested a whole lot of messages and slogans to see what voters associated most with various political parties, a lot of them to do with core governance issues like accountability, service delivery, that kind of thing, but a range of negative attributes as well. And I think the fact that the idea that the EFF spreads hatred, which was one of the highly associated ideas with the EFF, and that it is a violent party, which was also heavily associated with the EFF, was an interesting finding.
Ebrahim, so the poll is not a prediction of what will happen in 2024, but it suggests that the party is stagnating. How concerned should they be about this?
Quite, because they've got 3 elections to go on and actual data from election results to go on. So they obviously, with their bluster, will take the fact that they reached 12.4% in the local election as some great indicator that this is a major growth point for the party and that they're likely to, reach 1 million voters or more and so on. And that's what they claim, right? But I don't think that that's the case. Other than what Gareth's survey data is showing, I think it's increasingly dawning on South Africans that Malema is the official gossip from inside the ANC. Because how else does anyone get what the hell's going on inside the ANC, firstly? Secondly, their performance from 2016 in this kind of game of brinkmanship and expediency of getting people into power and then pulling it back depending on what you want to get out of it, I think is also becoming increasingly clear that this is a party about destabilization and it's about short-term incentives for the leadership of the party. There's probably a group of genuine true believers inside the party, but the leadership is certainly not it.
So Gareth, we've discussed the ANC being down 8 percentage points since 2019, and it does not seem as though that loss in support is moving to the EFF, which position themselves as an alternative to the ANC.
Yes, look, I mean, there's a lot of criticism of opposition parties in general at the moment that no one's, in any meaningful way being able to capitalise on this decline in the ANC's vote. And I think it applies as much to the EFF as it does to other opposition parties. There is some small growth. I mean, we have them sort of up a point or two from 2019, but that's, you know, neither here nor there really, given the state of the ANC's decline and the pace of that decline. So it's a universal challenge for opposition parties, but it certainly hasn't escaped the EFF, and I don't think they're impressing anyone at the moment.
So it's well known, Ebrahim, that the EFF trades in anger, and danger in that is that some of those people that you anger, they decide not to vote, and we see that. Is that a strategic mistake by the EFF?
Well, the politics of kind of vengeance, which is the kind of politics that they trade in, it's less anger and more vengeance that they trade in, is not serving their purpose, firstly. Secondly, I think it should dawn on them that voters are simply not going or shifting to them or shifting a vote to them and are merely abstaining. So there's a greater number of people who are simply not participating in electoral processes. They're not politically disinterested, nor are they apathetic, but they kind of engage in protest, they engage in direct action, other kinds of expression politically, but they're certainly not voting for the EFF. Even at the ANC's lowest point, they're not able to do that. I think Gareth's put them up a percentage point or two. They might pick up a little bit of support if they find accommodation with the RET faction of the ANC. That looks like there's some accommodation going on between them. But, you know, again, it depends, given what they bring, the game of brinkmanship they play and what they actually want from those people will determine whether they throw in their lot, or at least a part of their lot in with them or not.
The EFF has various radical and populist policies, Gareth, but why do we not see millions of poor South Africans not voting for them?
Look, there's a complex answer to that question. I think one of the reasons is that there just isn't actually that big a market for kind of radical socialism, or at least the EFF's brand of radical socialism, which has these kind of vengeful, as Ebrahim puts it, elements to it, and voters experience them as hateful and violent. It's actually quite a conservative electorate, South Africa. It's not the kind of thing that you're going to find a widespread market for, the sort of radicalism that the EFF offers. But there's another contributing factor. I mean, the EFF, you know, routinely refuses to take a formal position in government, kind of playing these sort of games on the margin and the kind of brinkmanship that Ebrahim referred to. And voters simply have no experience of this party in government because it won't give them an experience. And so the people are hugely uncertain about the EFF, whether this will all turn into a nightmare in government or whether it should be trusted with a vote at local government level at least.
Ebrahim, why does the EFF, why do they not want to formally govern in some of the coalitions and with our role players?
Simply because with authority comes responsibility. So they want the authority without the responsibility. And the only way to do that is to pretend that you're putting certain people in power, but you're using that as a negotiating chip to get out from them what you want. In 2016, it was a raft of contracts, you know, influence over procurement, public spending, and so on. There's an element of that which is legitimate politics, which is, you know, you dispense patronage. But this wasn't about that, but dispensing patronage to a constituency in society. This was about accumulation for a layer of leaders inside the party. And I think people are seeing increasingly through and through that this is a kind of project of megalomania for a certain set of leaders and a core of leaders in the party rather than what they claim to be. So Gareth's talking about radicalism. I think it's a faux radicalism. It's not even a genuine kind of socialism because their own behavior betrays that firstly, but secondly, they're flip-flopping on policy positions. You know, today it's A, tomorrow it's B. Today it's white, tomorrow it's black, is literally not doing them any favours.
Gareth, so Malema's favourability has taken a bit of a dip. How concerned should the party be about that?
Well, they should be very concerned. I mean, the EFF's core market, in fact, for all intents and purposes, its only market is ANC voters. And Malema has been their biggest draw card in that regard. Not only does he have this long-standing history in the ANC and the ability to draw on a big reputation in its structures at all levels, but, you know, he is the primary flag bearer for that party, and his favourability is typically higher than that of the EFF's. So the fact that it's dropping amongst all voters is one thing, but the other thing the survey shows is that obviously simultaneously, because they form such a large part of the electorate, it's dropping amongst ANC voters as well. And if the leader is unable to make an impact on alienated, angry ANC voters who are looking for an alternative, that's a problem for the EFF because it's essentially a one-man show, and without Malema to make that impact, it's got problems.
But do we know why his favourability is dropping?
No, we don't know exactly why it's dropping. I mean, there are a couple of factors which are inevitable. One is that there's a natural attrition in all leaders' favourability over time. The longer you stay in office, the more voters get tired of you, and that applies to all political leaders in all positions. It's very hard to keep a high favourability for a long period of time. But the fact that the EFF's brand is getting associated powerfully with these kind of negative attributes, hatred and violence, and racism to a degree, I think is hurting Malema's favourability because, as I say, he is the flag bearer for those kind of messages.
Ebrahim, as Gareth said, most South Africans identify the party with racism and identify the party as being violent. Do you think we're going to see them leaning into that kind of brand more and more now in the lead up to 2024?
Absolutely, because I don't think they have much else to go on. They certainly don't want to be in government, or if they want to be in government, it is for purposes of who knows what purpose is. It almost appears as if it's purposeless. And I think that's the alienating factor for most South Africans who might look at the party and think, is there a degree of genuine radicalism here? Are they going to take a real position in government? Will they be as responsive as they claim that they will be? And because they have no track record, they have nothing to show. So the only kind of politics they have available to them is the kind of politics of spectacle.
Ebrahim, Gareth, thank you so much.